There we go. Can everyone see the screen? We could do some reactions there. If everyone could give me a thumbs up, that'd be great. Awesome. Okay, awesome. It's hard to see everyone, so please, keep the reactions going. We do have some great support here. We have Nicole here, who's with the conference. That she'll be helping out with the chat, with any technology issues that you may run into. If for some reason you can't hear, reach out to Nicole. You could definitely chat with her. I'm going to try to watch the chat for this presentation, and then we'll go forward. So let's begin. She gave a wonderful introduction of who I am. The dissertation reference is at the bottom of the page there. This presentation is noted as barriers and successes to persistence. However, if you wanted to read the dissertation in full and really get into some of the details, you'll be able to find it on ProQuest, and the title of it is An Examination of Factors Impacting Post-Traditional Culinary Arts Student Persistence. Alrighty, so our objectives for today, let me see here. Our objectives for today is that we're going to define the characteristics of post-traditional students, exploring evidence from empirical community college research. We're going to gain an understanding of 14 contributing factors that distinguish between post-traditional students' ability to persist or non-persist. Participants will gain recommendations for improving persistence efforts that lead to increased degree completion rates. And then participants will identify immediate action steps to implement one or more strategies to support their ongoing efforts after the workshop to improve post-traditional student persistence to degree completion. And we're really going to define what post-traditional students. Let's see in the chat, if you want to write, are you familiar, yes or no, with the term post-traditional? Are we familiar with what that term is? I know everyone's muted. Let's see what's going on in the chat. Yes, we have a few individuals that are familiar. I do encourage you to please participate in the chat. That's a good way for me to be able to connect with you and get a temperature of how you're feeling. So our agenda today, we're going to define, I will state what the definition of post-traditional student is for this workshop. That will be coming up in a few slides. Show of hands, who's all familiar or have done some recent work with persistence? I know we're all familiar with persistence, but who's done some active strategic work towards improving persistence? Awesome. So in order to kind of how we're going to organize this workshop is we're going to talk about the problem that supported this dissertation, the purpose of that dissertation. I'm going to talk to you about the value of reframing the topic of persistence. And then we're going to talk about some of those major variables that have been studied that have been found to either hinder or help an individual reach degree completion. We will definitely spend some time with talking about recommendations, and then we'll have a breakout session where you will have the chance to talk amongst yourselves about different strategies of what you've tried, what you want to try, what worked, what failed. So we're going to have that discussion as well. We still have some individuals joining the workshop, so that's awesome. So let's begin. Research has found that only 40% of community college students persist to degree completion. A Midwest Community College's Culinary Arts Program of Study is experiencing a trending decline in student persistence to degree completion rates year after year. We all know that low persistence to degree completion rates impact post-traditional students, that community college, and employers alike. The research is necessary as limited information exists that could inform this community college's persistence to degree completion rates as a whole, but definitely more so focused on its culinary arts program. So to explain a good bit of the background, which is going to lead to how I reframe this topic, is that the college makeup has now changed. Traditionally, age students, those being under the age of 24, like that 18 to 24 range, has changed. whereas now adults 24 and older, 25 and older, now make up the majority of individuals pursuing a post-secondary education. That's very exciting. And what's even more exciting for us is that those adults, majority of those adults prefer or see that community colleges offers the education and the assistance to help them persist. So they're not going to go to a baccalaureate program. Their first look may be to consider starting at a community college. More specific to this research is that community colleges comprise the vast majority of culinary arts programs of study. So there are 265 programs that focus on this topic, that focus on this curriculum of culinary arts and hospitality education. And of course, we know that there is job growth from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics that show that there will be an 11% increase in jobs that would require individuals to have some type of post-secondary education, credential, degree, and that's very exciting. Now, to go into deeper, just to kind of break down what post-traditional student is. Um, Again, post-traditional students are each 25 years of older, and they are seeking opportunities for reduced tuition. They are seeking opportunities for transfer credits, for course flexibility. And again, just like MCC and other community colleges, it's a huge hybrid for these individuals to either restart their careers, finish their degrees, or learn a new trade. So as we look at post-traditional students, 15% of current undergraduate students fit that definition of the traditional student, as I talked about before. So why the term post-traditional? I'm going to give you the demographics on the next slide of what a post-traditional student is. But what we found, what researchers found is that when we label a student traditional and non-traditional, there's a negative connotation that's affiliated with that. So current research is moving towards a new terminology being the post-traditional student. Post-traditional student, that term empowers students by being more inclusive. It recognizes that they are now the majority of students, and it shows continued evolution of higher education. So who are they? They are adult students. They are commuter students. They may have delayed enrollment. They will be financially independent. They work full time. And a part of the post-traditional student definition also includes those individuals who have a military or veteran status. Some of these students do not have a high school diploma, and so they come to community colleges to finish their high school diploma, as well as working towards college credit. With being employed full-time, they may enroll part-time. And they are returning students and re-entering students. And they may be responsible for the care of a dependent or the care of an adult. So this definition goes beyond the traditional definition of a non-traditional student because it encompasses more of the characteristics of their status. And we're going to talk about why that's important because from this research study, we found that a number of these characteristics greatly impact their ability to persist or not persist. So again, the purpose of, well, this study was structured as a quantitative survey-based research study, and it looked at 3 areas. It was broken up with 30 variables. And we're going to look more into the student entry characteristics, the internal campus and academic environment, and the external environment. And so there are about 6 to 10 variables per each of those categories that have traditionally been found or empirically studied that impact student persistence. And for reframing this conversation, from those who are familiar with this topic, and if you've attended previous student retention, student attrition workshops, we're looking at this study from the angle of persistence because we know at community colleges, it may take a student on average 6 years to complete their degree. So it should be a 2 year situation, but sometimes it could be three. There are students who are still trying after 10 years. The average seems to be about 6 years for an adult, for a post-traditional student to be able to complete their degree. So instead of focusing on why they left, what contributed to that decision, or why they graduated, what contributed to that decision, this research is angled specifically at persistence, looking at those who either completed or did not complete, those who have paused and they may come back, those who have no plan to return. So we're going to encompass all angles of persistence, and that is why that's why I focus on reframing the topic in this way. And again, we're going to compare the relationships of the student entry characteristics, the internal campus academic environment, and the external environment variables that contribute. And what's awesome, which we'll later discuss, is that over 70 students participated in this study. And so that's another way, another reason why reframing the topic I think really helped. Also, the college, the community college that was studied has a very strong culinary arts program and culture. And so a lot of individuals wanted to contribute, to help, to identify how we can get more students to reach degree completion. So to help me uncover this answer, this research question, I use the framework of the theory of adult learner persistence in degree completion programs that was created by Dr. Matthew Bergman. He's out of the University of Kentucky, Louisville, and he used this framework to focus on adult learners who are in a baccalaureate program who were seeking degree completion in a degree completion program. So I thought, I'm curious to see what the findings are for community colleges within the culinary arts program that I studied. So the student entry characteristics that we looked at to see if they had a relationship to persistence or non-persistence. The student entry characteristics were gender. We looked at gender, age, ethnicity, parental education, previous college credit, educational goal, children, marital status, income, slash socioeconomic status, and motivation. Then we asked questions on that survey regarding the internal campus and academic environment, where we asked the participants about their enrollment status, cumulative GPA, institutional support, academic advising, faculty support, financial aid costs, flexible course offerings, active learning, prior learning assessment. And then for the external environment variables, we asked them about their finances, their family influence, their work influences, if they experience significant life events, community influences, hours of employment. And then from there, we were able to examine the relationships of these variables compared to the students who persisted or the students that did not persist. So just to briefly go over this, again, this is not a defense. I've done that. We completed the doctorate, but you do need to understand some of the assumptions, the delimitations and the limitations, because we do want you to apply the information from the study towards your own colleges, towards your own departments. And I do implore you to please consider doing your own research. And we'll talk about those recommendations for future research in a few moments. So some of the assumptions is that we're making the assumption that students are going to answer honestly. We're also making the assumptions that the participants have the knowledge of the terms that were used to ask them these questions, that they understood what was being asked of them. And then we're hoping that they're able to articulate their experiences in a survey method. Okay, some of the limitations is that we only looked at post-traditional students. But again, the majority of students pursuing post-secondary education are adults, and those being 24 and older. And then we also included some of the characteristics to really be inclusive with post-traditional students. Again, we're limited only to the academic year. This study, these participants started in the academic fall of August 2015. Again, I thought this again is a recent study. I want to get the most fresh information to help us identify how we can strengthen our own areas. Again, it would take 6 years. It could take 6 years for someone to complete their associate's degree. So we looked as far back as August 2015. This was a single survey, and the findings can only be generalized to this population and or of a similar demographic situation. And again, the focus is examining these three major slash sub concept variables of persistence factors. And this was a one-time survey. So we did not ask them multiple times to rate their experience from fall to winter to summer. It was just a one-time of those individuals who started fall 2015, they received the survey. And again, the delimitations is that the study does not include any individual that was under the age of 25. It cannot be generalized to baccalaureate programs. So for example, Matthew Bergman can't say, okay, I'm going to compare this to my program of study for those pursuing a bachelor's degree. And the program makeup is that we're looking at a culinary arts and hospitality program. And we're not looking at faculty satisfaction. How did they like their faculty? Do the faculty members seem knowledgeable? How was the curriculum? We're not looking at those factors. We're only looking at this study from the students' perspective of how they experienced, how they may have felt, in those situations. And this is non-narrative, it's not qualitative. We do encourage that, which we'll talk about that for future recommendations. And we're only looking at statistical data. So let's move forward. So let's get into some of the meat. I know you're all just on pins and needles to find out more on what was found, but 41 of the participants were female, 27 were male. Majority of the participants were aged 25 to 35. Majority of the participants identify their ethnicity as either white or Caucasian, then Black or African American, then Hispanic, Latino, 1% being Asian, and 2% being another race. 2 people in the survey did not identify, did not disclose some of their demographic information. But more specifically, also to highlight is that 58 of the participants identified as being able to persist. Again, they either graduated from the program or they're in the program currently, or they're hoping to return. And we're in year 2020, the study happened in 2020 when we gathered this information, and 12 did not persist, identify that they either left the program or they have no decision on returning. So how are we feeling? What questions do we have so far? Do we have questions? How's our chat looking? Okay, so let's continue on. If you have questions, please put them in there. I'm going to try to look at it, but I do want to get through the meat of this presentation so we can get the questions and you can get to talking to one another and we can talk about some of the highlights from the breakout session. So the results of the research question for hypothesis 1. Hypothesis 1 focused on the student entry characteristics. And what we found was that non-persistent students identified with having a lower annual income than the persistent students. Non-persistent students also marginally, it was significant that they never have been, they weren't married when they started in the program. That may have changed, but as of August 2015 snapshot, they were not married when they started the program and they had a lower income. For hypothesis 2, asking if there was a relationship between the internal campus and academic environment variables and persistence. Non-persistent students, it was found that they had, those who did not persist reported that they had lower cumulative GPAs. They were less likely to have completed any credited or non-credited learning assessment. They had levels of support from faculty, well, the levels of support from faculty, academic advisors, and the college in general. They have fewer opportunities of active learning. They were twice as likely to receive need-based financial aid. And then that compared to be 83% to 45 versus 45%. For the persistent students, they received merit-based scholarships, not need-based financial aid. And for both persistent and non-persistent students, It depended on the type of support that they received was significant. So when we look at hypothesis three, asking if there was a relationship between the external environment variables and persistence, non-persistent students reported that they had greater family-related stress and less family support. They had lower levels of encouragement and support from their communities, example, friends, employers, classmates. They spent more hours per week on outside employment. They experienced significant life events while in school. They had greater school interference due to work, family, and community responsibilities among non-persistent students. So to give you a snapshot here of how that looked, let's spend some time looking at this slide because I know we're all hearing, I know you're anxious to learn about this. So again, significant out of those 10 variables I showed you earlier from the framework, the income variable and marital status showed significance. The variables in parentheses showed a marginal significance, okay, but it still is a contributing factor. So those who were able to persist reported having higher income. Those who did not persist reported having lower income. For the internal academic environment, we had the cumulative GPA. Again, if your GPA was higher, if you had some form of completing a prior learning assessment, if you received a scholarship, if you had a sense that you had greater institutional support, if you spent more time with your academic advisor and also felt that your advisor was knowledgeable about your program of study for culinary arts, hospitality, for example, for this research study, you were more likely to persist. If you had greater support from your faculty, more active learning experiences, you got engaged in the classroom, your instructor made you, feel offer the ability for you to be able to interact with the class and you took up on that opportunity to interact with the class, you were more likely to persist. And then marginally for cost concerns, those who persisted, they had more concerns about the cost of an education. They were more in tune or knowledgeable, wanted to know how they could possibly look at those scholarships. How could they afford this education? How could they consider any type of reimbursement? They were just more engaged and they advocated for their education, we can say. For the external environment variable, hours of employment, if you worked fewer hours in outside employment, if you had greater family support and stability, if you had greater support from your community, you were more likely to persist your education. For work influences, it was marginally significant with the survey method, but they did report that they had less conflict between school and work. And so we're going to talk about what that looks like and how that may feel and what we can do about this. So to look at the kind of just to frame the non-persistent row column here, the students, those 12 participants who completed the survey reported that they had lower income, they were not married at the time of enrollment, they had lower GPA, they did not complete prior learning assessment, they received financial aid instead of merit-based aid, they felt they had lower institutional support, they had lower contact with their academic advisors, they felt they had less support from faculty, they had fewer active learning experiences, they were just a little disengaged in this. They have fewer concerned about the costs of education. And I'm sure some of you are probably thinking, let's talk about that financial aid. Let's talk about what that means and how that impacts the student. They had more hours of outside employment. They had less family support and stability. They had less support from community, and they had more conflict between school and work. So recommendations, you could say for the studentry characteristics, we are looking at the dispositional barriers that the students may face. When we think of the internal campus and academic environment, we're thinking of the institutional barriers these students, these post-traditional students may face. And when we think of the external environment variables, we're thinking about the personal barriers that a student may face. So let's break this down with some of the recommendations. Please take notes. Please get active in the chat. You know, if I say something that you're familiar with, or like a recommendation that you're actively trying or you did try, we could talk about if it worked or if it didn't, what that effort may have looked like. But you could just simply put an explanation or a P. You could do a capital P or a lowercase p because we're talking about persistence. How about that in the chat? Okay. So we still have some individuals joining the workshop. That's awesome. The workshop will be recorded. You'll be able to watch the beginning part of this discussion at a later date. But again, if I highlight a recommendation that you're familiar with, that you've tried, that you've seen work, or it did not work, it doesn't matter. Just put it in the chat a P. So again, for the student entry characteristics for income, for recommendations that we have that I talked about, and that I researched that worked for other colleges was the importance of leveraging relationships with stakeholders. When we think of a student wanting, feeling that income was either a barrier or income, not being stressed about income, we're thinking when we talk about recommendations, what can we do or what do we identify as what can help the student improve their income slash socioeconomic status while enrolled in, at the community college that we studied. And we found that leveraging relationships with stakeholders was a great way to help students. Once we get the student involved with the sense with community or an advisory board, or get them involved with faculty, with staff, with student engagement opportunities, that kind of that increases their network, which in turn could lead to jobs that are more friendly towards work and being in school, but also offering them employment, also helping them to explore, you know, what career path worked for someone, what didn't work for someone else. They're able to now have more informed and educated conversations with those that are kind of vested in this education that they're seeking. They're vested with them to help them improve. We've found that if we provide opportunities for practical knowledge or professional interaction, that it leads to definitely an encouraging situation where students are now more informed about, let's say, cost of an education. They're more informed about their financial literacy. They're more informed about how they're going to become a more financially successful student while persisting. Some students don't even know at the community college that I studied that scholarships even existed for them or that they were applicable for them. And I know that's a common challenge that I know uh, my colleagues and I talk about that we want to do to try to help and inform students and get to know them so we can understand how we can help them. And then if your program of study or your department, well, most likely your program, if they don't have an advisory board, I do encourage for individuals to explore what that may look like and who may be involved. Because the more diverse we are in with our feedback, with bringing others to the table, that advisory board could represent the community or the industry of employment. That would just, again, add to more opportunity for a student to increase their income and socioeconomic status. When we look at recommendations for higher education, we were the significant variables were cumulative GPA and academic advising. We found that improving a student's sense of belonging, improving student support services and resources, and academic advisor, setting up more touch points with academic advising greatly helped the student. I definitely recommend for these 4 areas to be explored. And I ask you when we go into the breakout session for you to think about what that may look like for you. So we found that these students who have a strong sense of belonging, um, they asked and participated and got engaged with student support services. They sought resources and they spent more time with their advisor and getting to know their advisor. They were more likely to persist. When we think about prior learning assessment, huge topic, something we can't really go deep into today. But we do want to create transparent benchmarks for evaluating institution and military transcript certifications, explore a new student entry practical exam and portfolio evaluation for of support services. We do want to streamline personalized determinations and prior learning credit. We do want to make a clear determination of mastery of skills. And then we want to communicate this information and get it out to students. When we look at financial aid, there are definitely, again, another huge area. This would be, I am so excited for the findings from the study, but identifying financial aid interventions that could help to communicate what financial aid is, financial aid resources, financial aid help desk, things of that nature will greatly help students. Offering flexible office hours so that students are able to get support, post-traditional students are able to get support at a time when they're not working is critical. We know from the findings that was discussed earlier that a post-traditional student works more full-time and attends school part-time. So when they're able to take part in these classes, and for example, for the program of study, a lot of these adults, they take their classes in the evening, and a lot of the classes are 6 to 8 hours long. And sometimes they have to take 2 classes a week. When will they have the time to seek the resources and get the information when they're working or taking care of a dependent or facing the other barriers that they have to overcome? So communicating financial aid information, conducting active research in the financial aid area and how students are impacted, it's definitely recommended. And targeting funds to improve financial aid improvements with more staffing, more office hours, more information, more education should definitely be explored. When we look at institutional support, we're thinking about dynamically utilizing the information system that communicates interdepartmentally. And what we're talking about here is eliminating silos. So if a student has to go through this chain and then they have to go to this report and then they have to talk to this person, how can we utilize a system that's already in place at your institution that could speak to one that colleagues, staff, and faculty can understand a touch point of where a student left off at in one area that they were concerned about, and then we're at least able to direct them without so many silos so that the student can actually persist through. So when we talk about persistence, it's also the student's ability to kind of advocate for their own education, advocate resources, but we don't want them to have to fight through to figure out who to talk to and how to talk to. So if we look at forming a customer service mindset to the internal campus environment, that is a huge benefit. So I know there's been some talk that some of you may have heard of, and if you haven't, I encourage you to really do more research on customer service in higher education. Done are the days where someone applies, they wait to hear, maybe they got in, or maybe they have to seek for themselves. We're now seeing that when different departments take a more customer service friendly approach with kind of being a little bit more tailored in their services to a student, that helps the student persist and helps them get the information. We're not talking about hand holding. I don't want to instill that, but having a more customer service friendly approach would be highly recommended. And then providing post-traditional students with extended and tailored advising services. The more touch points we can give a student, the more that they're going to feel that their advisor cares about them, the more that they're going to feel that their advisor is knowledgeable in their area. And does that look like an academic advising meeting, for example, with this culinary arts department to really understand the track of study or what changes may have occurred? Absolutely. More touch points internally and externally. And when we look at faculty support and active learning, we are looking at faculty engagement with students, for faculty to improve active-based learning opportunities, for faculty to receive professional development training on how to incorporate active learning in the classroom. So let's look at cost. And I'm going to briefly go over this because I do want to make sure we have time for our breakout session. So we want to improve the transparency of the cost of an education paired with the potential income a student could earn after completion. We want to continue to identify ways to make college more affordable for its post-traditional students. We want to figure out ways to reduce tuition rates or reduce that burden on a student. Again, looking at reducing fees for supplies, books, and uniforms. And then when we look at the external environment recommendations, we want to gain an understanding of the impact of work influence and hours of employment on post-traditional students. We want to leverage opportunities with the advisory board. These stakeholders may be more flexible in work hours that could accommodate the rigor of a post-traditional student in this program. We want to explore additional work opportunities within the department or on the campus that could provide relevant career experiences to the field of culinary arts. When we're looking at family influences and community influences, I want to encourage you to increase your efforts to encourage students to build a community, identify employers that are supportive of their program. Faculty and staff encourage students to get to know one another. That's something I always do all the time. You guys get together, study together, have some type of hospitality together. You will become each other's friends. And in the hospitality world, you never know who's going to become your boss. You want to get to start forming a network and talking to others. So getting involved with extracurricular activities related to the study of culinary arts, more specifically, is a huge recommendation. So improving policies and procedures that affect institutional support behaviors on persistence is definitely recommended. I do implore community colleges to take a guided pathway approach. When we look at the student persona for who are the students who actually do graduate within 2 years or graduate period from community college, you know, that's great information. Who are the vast majority of those students who do not graduate? And that's what the guided pathway or path forward approach looks at. Who are our marginalized students who are not successful and why? How do they look? What are their demographic information? What are their student entry characteristics? What's their feedback on the internal campus and academic environment? What's their external support looking like? What barriers are they challenged with? Once we can understand exactly who we're serving actively every day, not just the few that do actually graduate, but we really start looking at our marginalized students, there could be progress. So I do implore you to get involved with those efforts. So when we look at recommendations for future research, we want to look at student preparedness. For this community college that was studied, of course, in like many community colleges, it is open enrollment. That means that we're getting, it's an open access. Anybody could enter. So maybe that fall of 2015, the 284 students that received the email who started, or do they even have the intent to start the program? Did they just start a class, but they were not truly enrolled in culinary arts? You know, what contributed to that decision? Who are they? What are they looking to get out of higher education? So exploring student preparedness is a huge opportunity for future research. Conducting a qualitative inquiry, now that I have this quantitative data and I've told you about it, it would be very exciting to really talk and invite these individuals, if we could, to participate in qualitative inquiry to really find out more about what impacted their ability to persist or not persist. And then conducting more research at a community college level is highly recommended. Again, when I started this process, you cannot find much information on community college culinary arts empirical research. There were some that were in bits and pieces, and even on the topic of persistence, some studies look at student entry characteristics, some look at internal campus, some studies looked at external environment variables. So in a whole, bringing this topic together, looking at these three major areas, honing in on culinary arts and hospitality. The community college that the study was conducted at is a top community college that's doing a great job with its education and its curriculum. So I'm excited to add this research to help. And there are many colleges that have awesome culinary arts program and other trades programs. But I deeply encourage individuals to conduct for future research, to get with your research departments, to learn more about the student experience. So now we have about 18 minutes. So this is good. So we have a breakout session right now. And I believe Nicole or Jen may be emailing you or placing in the chat persistence reflection worksheet that we have here. You're going to spend some time in the breakout session talking about some of the strategies. Let's talk about what you've tried. I encourage you to talk to one another. You may be only able to answer these 4 questions in the, let's say we'll give you, maybe it's 10:30, maybe 10 minutes in your breakout session to discuss what you have tried, what challenges you did face, what's your biggest takeaway, and what will you now consider? And so we're going to, your chat, you should have this. Nicole, Jen, do we have it in the chat?
Yes, I went ahead and put it in the chat. If you have trouble accessing it, let us know and we'll try to get that to you. We have a few questions as well. Do you want to handle those at the end?
Well, yes, handle them at the end.
All right. Thanks for the questions, everyone.
Awesome. Okay, so you're going to go into automatic breakout and we'll see you back in 10 minutes. Thank you. Nicole, do you think they were able to get into their breakout?
Renetta, I think that we have the majority of people here in their breakout, but I think these guys here, we need to assign them a separate room. So give me 1 second here and I'll move them around. What else do we have here? There we go.
I'm just typing out that slide with those 4 questions. Okay, so how's it going?
Okay, pretty good.
Okay.
Pretty good. It's going good. Sorry about the link. I'm not sure what happened there for you to not get in.
Oh, I see. All right, so I put that in the chat for everyone. So we have some questions.
Yes.
Cons, post-traditional. Well, for placements exam, we're also talking about their experiences and work. And certifications, professional certifications also should be considered for placements exam.
Yeah, for the PLA.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there was an understanding of what that is.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I think we just maybe clarify that.
And then I can answer the questions on community college environment. How do we change the culture to more academic areas, clubs or groups or clubs? Did your dissertation include? Okay.
I brought you back, Nicole.
Yeah, thanks. I was trying to figure out the document. I'm going to try to download it again.
You got sent to a room here. There we go.
Okay, I downloaded it. I opened it up this time. I think I emailed it to you, Jen. Great conversations going on though in my breakout room. So
Yeah.
yes.
I was looking at the time on my phone and I was like, oh no. I was like, oh,
No, you did great. You stopped right in good time, so we can get back and do questions real quick.
yeah. I was like, okay, we gotta start rapping here. You gotta
That research is so exciting. Wow, it's so detailed.
okay, great. That's good to
Yeah,
hear.
yeah. I know we talk about this all the time, so it's awesome to have the data to really to back it up and kind of really explore some of those things.
Yeah. And for academic advising on a survey, so those numbers include the statistical analyses, but on the survey, just seeing the vast amount of people who felt their advisor did not care about them, was
Hmm.
not knowledgeable.
Oh, okay.
I think that's it. And, I think we're still battling when we are responsible for so many programs and
Right.
career certificates and certificates of achievement, and they're changing constantly. It's how can we be knowledgeable about those things? We really have to look at
Right.
really moving us into those specialized learning communities so that we can learn more.
Right.
So I think we're moving there. It's just always slow. It's a slow process.
It is. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Downloaded.
Yeah.
How long do you want them in their breakout rooms? What do you think?
I was thinking 10 minutes. So I think I put them in there at 10:30. So maybe another 6 minutes.
Another 6 minutes? Okay. Yep, that sounds good.
I feel like they're talking,
Yeah.
I'm hoping, I know that they're talking and sharing. And
Yeah.
that was a lot of information to give them. There's a couple of people, I don't want to admit people when they should go into a breakout room. So I don't know what to do about those who are in the waiting room. They're just starting, they're just joining.
Can you see them? We can add them. I can add them, I think, to a room if we
Okay,
want to
so,
add them into the group.
all right. I'll go
Where are
ahead.
they at?
I think they're in the waiting room.
Did they just get?
Yeah, should I admit them? It's Terry.
I can't see them. Okay, here, I can assign them to a group here. Let me we have, okay, who else are we getting?
Thanks, Jen.
Terry went
I
to
was
3.
terrible.
I was able to download that again and I was able to open it. So hopefully everyone else can open it.
Oh,
You
okay.
can always email it to them too if they can.
He's in. Who else? Anybody else?
No,
Oh.
not that I see, just us three.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I can't see the, I can no longer see the admit waiting room.
I see.
I can only see our breakout rooms.
Okay. Yeah, during the presentation, I was like, oh, okay, all right, we can do this. I'm like, it's just like teaching online. We got this.
You did great.
Thank you.
I think
I
it's great.
couldn't do it without you guys. I mean, this is the first time during making a scholarly workshop, and I couldn't get my hair done, you guys. I bought this wig yesterday, and this wig is like really freaking me out.
It looks nice.
I'm like
Yeah.
my face, so I'm just like, oh.
Hold on.
Good.
But with being without power for like 4 or 5 days, it was just not
That
the
was rough.
priority.
I did not lose power.
You didn't?
I did not. I lost internet, but I did not lose power.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because I live close to downtown.
Right.
And I don't know if they maybe, I don't know. I don't think we lost it. I don't think I lost it at all. It didn't even like go in and out, but
Yeah. That's amazing.
I know I would have died. I think I
Yeah,
would have gone on vacation.
Yeah. I was like, okay, I finally get to be the 1%. Really?
Mhm.
Without power?
Yeah.
I was like, ooh. But yeah, you're right. Yesterday, I think I had a breakdown of like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, I'm so hungry. Because again, when you're in a hotel, you're not really eating how you normally would.
Right.
And I was like, oh, talk about food insecurity. I'm feeling really a lot of pressure. And the quarter just started, so I was feeling so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So imagine, you know, I always like to make a joke of something, but yeah. Yeah, I think, how I'll address a prior learning assessment, because not everyone is from MCC. Um, that's to be defined, but when your military experience is not recognized,
Mhm.
or your professional certifications is not
Yeah.
recognized, or you've been a chef or executive chef, but you had no formal education, how do you recognize that? And I think that's what goes back to the benchmarks that need to be established. So then it's consistent, because the last thing you want is for someone to get some type of credit towards their degree completion and then others don't, or it's inconsistent, or it's not even valued at all.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we feel that a lot. Um,
Yeah. And I
There's
think
a
we're doing a better job of it at Metro. I think just having that area now. I mean, we have that prior learning assessment. It's defined. It's got its own little spot now. And I think
Right.
before it was kind of like advising was kind of, the first front end person to that, and then
Right.
kind of referring to the deans to. But
Mm.
now we got, what's that gal's name that's running that area now? She just came and spoke with us.
Oh,
But I
really?
think she's partners with Michelle over in the transfer center.
Oh,
Kathy
So,
Well-
Brunks, right?
yes, thank you. Yes, that's her area now.
what's
And
her
so-
name?
Kathy Brunkhurst?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's right under prospective students. We have that drop down now, and you can see transfer center PLA. And so students can now connect right to that department.
Right.
So
So tell me this, do they only look at PLA, or here at MCC, are they only looking at math and science, or they're really looking at certifications? And
they're looking at certifications, or they're looking at all of that. So
Right.
Work experience, prior experience, portfolios, everything.
Right.
Yeah, if you talk to a student that's been in the field for 10, 20 years, they want to be able to come in and they don't want to have to retake a lot of that.
Right.
So that's
So yeah,
Well,
it's centralized now, so it's good.
Yeah, centralized is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Should we bring them back?
do
Let's
it.
bring them back. Okay, I'm gonna close all of these rooms.
Okay.
I got a minute here, and they'll start coming back here.
I feel like music. Music.
I know. Should have figured that out.
I know. I'm like,
So much for being here.
I hate to wake them up, but do you think a little Black Eyed Peas?
That's great. I love that. It's been a while since I've listened.
Right. Yeah.
They'll think we were having a little party over here while they were.
Right. Okay. Can you hear it good? Is that good?
Yep, you can hear it.
We're pumped up. We got a feeling we're gonna have some good strategies. That's what I'll say. Welcome back, everyone. We're all coming back. All right. So I think we're all back in here. All right, so I got a feeling we got some good strategies, do we? Well, I thought Matthew was like dancing with his fingers. He's typing. So how are we feeling about how was your breakout? Oh, should we unmute? Hello?
You guys might have to chat it out.
Thank you, Nancy. Nancy gave a thumbs up. How are we feeling? Yeah, you could chat it out. I wish.
I felt like our group had a lot to talk about after listening to the first part of your session, as far as
Okay.
identifying challenges and number of faculty, relationships between advisors and faculty, transportation, and then also spoke a lot about the age groups and the population numbers and what it looks like from one program to another.
Right. Oh, I think that's great. Who else? Can we hear from 2 or 3 others? Well, to answer some of the questions in the chat. So I know there were some questions about prior learning assessment. And so for the purposes of this study and for the recommendations that were stated, it's recommended not just for math or English prior learning assessment, but especially with community colleges, we have to look at our prior learning experiences from our students and in the trades areas that they represent. And so if you're a military or veteran student and you have all this great experience and professional certification, and then you can't apply it to the degree of study, that's something that, we want to ask and encourage different colleges and departments to think about. Do we want to recognize that to help catapult these students forward? So when you're looking at if it was a chef who had 20 years but just never completed their degree, but they have certifications in surf, save, and sanitation. Do they have to take that surf, save, sanitation class? Can we account for that? And so I know here at MCC, where I work at full time, it is recognized. There is a department that kind of centralizes that information and works to identify benchmarks and how to establish criteria. And so I encourage everyone to get to know those individuals, know what strategies and benchmarks they have identified. I think there was another question about in the chat, the community college, around how do we change the culture to more academic area groups or clubs? Did your dissertation include an inventory of academic programs or clubs or organizations? It did not include an inventory of different clubs or organizations that they joined. There's some new clubs that's now currently in the program, and there were some clubs back then that I was not familiar with, but it asks for their involvement on, did they have the length of time that they may have spent in the classroom or outside the classroom with individuals within the program. So it did not look specifically at Tri Omega is a culinary program that's used, a culinary group that's used, that's active at different colleges. And then, so I put in there the chat, what have you tried? What challenges did you face? So we're kind of at the end of the workshop, but do we have any last questions or comments? Oh, we talked about the cricket syndrome of how to engage students with the when live with them, whether it be in the classroom, the advising session, or via Zoom. I think that's great that that group was able to talk about what worked and what didn't work. I'm not familiar with the cricket method, but I'm definitely going to do some research on it. Well, thank you so much for your time, facilitators. I don't know how much more time we have, but I'm so thankful that you all engaged today, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kasalka, for being here. What a wonderful presentation. Your research is incredible, and thank you for the time to reflect as well. That's very helpful. So take care.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.